We are welcoming you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. This is a different topic. I heard with interest Dr. Asteri's talk previously. This is an entirely different topic. I will try to connect and focus on relations between autism, biological sex, and the gender identity. These data are new, and this research have been performed during the last decade, in the last year. This presentation will focus on these umbrellas of diversity. We talk about the autism spectrum and the transgender spectrum, and also this has a different meaning based on biological sex. First, I would like to provide some definitions. This is the so-called genderbread person, and this is to distinguish what a biological sex is, what is the gender identity, and what is the gender expression and gender attraction. All these are different things. Gender identity depends on a person's feeling about their gender and may be different from biological sex at birth, male and female, based on external genitalia. This is also called the sex assigned at birth. Of course, these may differ from chromosomal sex. There is a minority of people born with chromosomal, genetic, or hormonal sex characteristics that differ from male-female. And these are the intersex individuals, and they may grow up as boys or girls. So the intersex is a refers to the biological sex. So we have all these different views: biological sex, gender identity, how a person feels, expression, how he likes to express themselves, attraction. This is different from expression and gender identity. And so we try to understand all these views and all these parameters in individuals with the autism spectrum disorder. Some more definitions. Cisgender refers to someone who has a gender identity that matches their sex assigned at birth. Someone who is biologically a female and feels like a female is a cisgender person. On the other side, there is a variety of gender identities, including transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, agender, gender queer, two-spirit, bigender, and for all these identities, we use the term transgender and gender diverse, who is a person whose gender identity doesn't correspond to the biological sex. There is an estimate of 0.4 to 1.3 of transgender and gender diverse individuals in the general population, although these rates differ depending on the definition. The first studies that we have are on neurodiversity and gender dysphoria, and I will present them immediately next. So sex is an essential component in understanding neurodiversity, and all this literature focuses on the intersection between neurodiversity and gender diversity. Is there an increased coexistence? How are they connected? And third, there is a need for understanding and support. So these first studies on gender dysphoria in individuals with ASD, with autism spectrum disorder, show that Individuals with gender dysphoria have there are increased rates of gender diversity in children, adolescents, and adults with ASD in comparison to the general population. Excuse me, this is gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a condition defined as intense stress resulting from the mismatch between sex at birth and gender identity. 4 to 5.4% of children with ASD may potentially be transgender or gender diverse compared to 0.7% of non-ASD children. In a study of 300,000 children, a fourfold chance of gender dysphoria was found in children with ASD relative to the general population. Despite the different percentages, however, the proportions remain similar in all studies. ASD in individuals with gender dysphoria, adults, adolescents, and children have a prevalence of 4.8 to 26% of individuals with gender dysphoria have an ASD diagnosis. And some authors, Hale and et al., show that 6% and 4.8% respectively of individuals with gender dysphoria are autistic based on the reviews of clinical reports. In the general population, this is 1 to 2% of ASD. So there are also increased rates of ASD in individuals with gender dysphoria. Previous studies mainly come from gender dysphoria clinics and not individuals, and that do not include individuals with diverse genders, as well as people with severe gender dysphoria and or parents who are probably more tolerant. Also, there are increased rates of mental health problems in transgender people and people with gender dysphoria, such as depression, anxiety, and substance use. And a third group of studies has identified increased autism-related traits in gender diverse individuals compared to the general population. This is one of the best designed studies. The last author is Simon Baron-Cohen from Cambridge, and they investigated the hypothesis of rates of autism and other neurodevelopmental and psychiatric diagnoses and autistic traits in transgender and gender diverse individuals. And this study used 4 samples, so there are not only individuals attending clinics who might be more aware. So these samples are general samples, and they tried to find connections between autism, other neurodevelopmental conditions, psychiatric diagnosis, and autistic traits in gender diverse individuals. This is the one of the tools that they use, the empathy systemizing quotient, the EQSQ child. This is the Greek version that we have translated with permission. And just to remind you that the systemizing scores are higher in males. This is a normal distribution in males, in females, and in autism. And all these are part of the extreme male brain theory expressed by Simon Baron-Cohen. And the empathizing scores, autism here, males and females. These traits do not correspond to diagnosis, and these tools are very helpful in understanding the relations between gender identity, sex, and autistic traits also. Now, in these 5 samples, it was found 3 to almost 6 times more likely to have autism after adjusting for age and socioeconomic status. Higher scores of autistic traits, systemization traits, and sensory sensitivity, and lower score of empathy were found relative to cisgender individuals. In the two datasets, more comorbidity with neurodevelopmental, also ADHD and learning disorder, and psychiatric disorders was found, and it was in general more likely to declare that they had autism. Compared to the cisgender individuals, transgender and gender diverse people typically have higher rates of autism, as well as other neurodevelopmental and psychiatric disorders. And all transgender and gender diverse individuals have more autistic traits, more systemizing and sensory sensitivity traits, and fewer empathic traits compared to the cisgender individuals. This diagram from this paper also, this is another work by Simon Baron-Cohen. They assessed autistic traits using the AQ in a clinical sample of transgender compared with cisgender. It was found that transgender individuals assigned as females at birth, so biologically females, and transgender had more autistic traits, whereas no differences were noted in males. Other studies have investigated the sexual health, orientation, and activity in autistic adolescents. This is another topic. And in this study, it was found that people with ASD were less likely to report sexual activity or heterosexuality relative to non-ASD. It was more likely to report asexuality or other sexuality relative to people with non-ASD, and no differences were found in initiation of sexual activity. From the same group, males at birth, biologically males with autism were more likely to be bisexual relative to neurotypical. Females at birth with autism were more likely to be homosexual relative to neurotypical, and all individuals with autism were more likely to express a wider range of orientation relative to the general population. Among men and women with autism, women were more likely to have diverse sexual orientation and sexual activity, less likely to be heterosexual, and had a younger age of onset of sexual activity. And coming to sex differences we call differences between biological male and female. Parent reports show that girls on the autism spectrum are more likely than boys to exhibit appearances and mannerism as well as behaviors that are outside the traditional roles. Girls with autism's unique profile and increased levels of stress related to gender concerns need a personalized approach during adolescence. And to remind you here, the female phenotype of ASD that has been developed by other authors, and especially Meng Chuan as the last author. And just to remind that this female phenotype of ASD has been recently developed, and it seems that girls, biologically girls, have a different profile, may have a better understanding and awareness of the need for social interaction, may have a greater desire to interact with others. The well-known is the camouflage of difficulties, either by disguising or developing compensatory behaviors, few close friendships, protected in groups of children. Girls are often bullied in groups at school. They have typically a better language and better communication skills, and other characteristics. The main question about gender identity and neurodiversity is this a social construction, or there are really biological effects on this increased co-occurrence of neuro and gender diversity? Some authors have expressed that this might be a social construction because gender diversity is probably an expected outcome in individuals who integrate and understand less social information for gender identity. And also that transgender individuals may be more likely to report autistic characteristics in the context of feeling that they do not fit socially, and they do not easily integrate into social gender norms, but also in the context of long-term negative experiences and stress. However, these percentages, this high prevalence of this co-occurrence has been described in big data sets, and these reports come from parents and teachers. And also many investigators have used the EQ, the SQ, and other tools that also express the autistic and relative to autism traits. There is some evidence that this might be biological. There may be a biological effect explaining this co-occurrence. And this also comes from studies showing that the prenatal influences of sex steroids in brain, sex steroids during the prenatal life shape brain development and contribute to both autism and autism traits and other neurodevelopmental conditions. And at the same time, they also shape sex-related behaviors. It's not known, however, if these sex steroids are related to the formation of gender identity, which is different. Many studies have shown that fetal androgens, increased exposure to fetal androgen has been related to behaviors in humans. Testosterone is elevated in males during this period of gestation, 8 to 24 weeks. And individuals who have been exposed to typical concentrations of testosterone or other androgens, either due to genital or genetic conditions or due to exogenous administration, they have been shown to exhibit more male typical play behaviors. And also they in other studies, they have more autistic traits. This is in relevance with the experiments by Heinz in individuals with adrenal hyperplasia, which is a genetic disorder with increased androgen in primates. And she investigated the way that these primates play and their previous exposure to fetal androgens. This is another study from the group of Simon Baron Cohen. Fetal testosterone has been related to autistic traits, not autism, but autistic traits in using the AQ and the CAST scores. And the last part of this presentation is the support and the understanding and the support of this called also two margins individuals. There are other neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD and special learning disorder that often coexist with autism. The entire population of transgender and gender diverse have an increased vulnerability for multiple psychiatric conditions. and also a multiple stressful experience in the context of discrimination, abuse, and victimization. So the previous impression that these gender diverse expressions in children, adolescents, and adults with ASD, that this may be an obsession, seems now to be better understand, and it seems that it's not an obsession, but there are biological connections between biological sex and gender identity in ASD people. And as I told you previously, this is called the double margin. Individuals in the autism spectrum and individuals in the gender diverse spectrum. This is a very highly at risk group for suicidal behaviors and other comorbid conditions. And this coexistence is extremely stressful without proper support. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics, Words Matter. There are several guidance and guidelines on using an anti-bias language in treating and intervene and supporting this group of ASD spectrum and gender spectrum community. And now I'm ending. This is this Sunday in Athens. If you come in Athens, if you are in Athens this Sunday, we have organized with the municipality of Athens this walk on Zapio, and you are all invited to join us. Thank you.